The 1960s were an era when Detroit blurred the line between streetcar and race car so thoroughly that sometimes there was no line at all. Manufacturers built machines you could theoretically drive to work on Monday and race on Sunday. Cars that came from the factory with specifications that would make modern legal departments faint. Today, we're counting down 12 street cars from the 1960s that were basically factory race cars. Machines homologated for competition, built to meet minimum production requirements, and sold to the public with racing DNA encoded in every component. These weren't street cars that handled well or accelerated quickly. These were purpose-built competition machines that happened to have license plates. Let's dive in. Number 12, 1969, Pontiac Firebird, Trans Am Ram Air 4. Pontiac's Trans Am wasn't just named after the SCCA racing series. It was built specifically to compete in that series, a homologation special that brought racing technology directly to the street. The 1969 model represented the Trans Am's debut year, and Pontiac pulled out every engineering trick to make it competitive. The Ram Air 4 400 cubic inch V8 produced a rated 345 horsepower, though that figure was conservative to avoid insurance penalties and SCCA displacement penalties. The actual output approached 400 horsepower, thanks to aggressive camshaft timing, high-flow aluminum cylinder heads, and a functional ram air induction system that forced cold air directly into the carburetor. The engine featured forged aluminum pistons, a forged steel crankshaft, and 4-bolt main bearing caps, components you'd find in purpose-built race engines, not street cars. The 4-speed manual transmission used heavy-duty internals to survive the engine's power and the abuse racing would inflict. The rear axle featured a limited slip differential and gearing options that ranged from highway-friendly to drag strip aggressive. But the Trans Am's racing credentials extended far beyond the powertrain. The suspension used heavy-duty springs, performance-tuned shock absorbers, and front and rear anti-roll bars sized for track work. The front disc brakes and rear drums were the largest Pontiac offered, providing stopping power adequate for racing speeds. The steering was quick and precise, communicating road feel that most muscle cars never approached. The Trans Am package included functional hood scoops, a rear spoiler that generated actual downforce, and wider tires mounted on special wheels. The overall effect was purposeful and aggressive, a car that looked like it belonged on a racetrack because it did. Pontiac built only about 8 Trans Ams with the Ram Air 4 engine in 1969, making it one of the rarest muscle cars ever produced. The scarcity resulted from late introduction. The Trans Am package debuted mid-year and high cost, but those 8 cars represented Pontiac's absolute commitment to SCCA Trans Am racing, machines built without compromise to win races. On the track, Trans Ams competed against Camaros, Mustangs, and Barracudas in wheel-to-wheel racing that tested every aspect of vehicle performance. The Trans Am's handling was its strongest asset. The suspension tuning and chassis balance allowed it to carry more speed through corners than heavier, more powerful competitors. Today, Ram Air 4 Trans Ams are among the most valuable Pontiac muscle cars, commanding 6-figure prices and representing the pinnacle of Pontiac's performance engineering during the golden era. Number 11, 1964, Dodge 330, Hemi Lightweight. Dodge's assault on drag racing in 1964 produced some of the most purpose-built factory race cars ever sold to the public. The 330 Hemi Lightweight took Dodge's plainest intermediate sedan and transformed it into a drag strip weapon through weight reduction and maximum power. The 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, Chrysler's legendary racing engine, produced a rated 425 horsepower, though actual output exceeded 500 horses at optimal tune. The engine featured hemispherical combustion chambers that improved breathing and power at the cost of complexity and expense. The dual 4-barrel carburetors sat atop a cross-ram intake manifold that maximized airflow. The weight reduction was extreme and uncompromising. Dodge replaced steel body panels with aluminum wherever possible. Hood, doors, fenders, bumpers all switched to lightweight materials. The interior was stripped to essentials: rubber floor mats instead of carpet, minimal sound deadening, and lightweight bucket seats. The glass was thinner than standard production, and many cars left the factory without radios or heaters. The result was a car weighing hundreds of pounds less than a standard 330, improving power-to-weight ratio dramatically. The 4-speed manual transmission featured heavy-duty components throughout. The rear axle used a Dana unit with ratios optimized for quarter-mile performance, typically in the 4.56 or 4.88 range. The suspension was stiffened for drag racing. Heavy-duty springs and shock absorbers controlled weight transfer during launches. Dodge built only about 50 Hemi lightweights in 1964, all intended for serious drag racers. The cars weren't practical for street use. The race-oriented gearing made highway driving unpleasant. The stripped interior offered no comfort, and the HEMI engine demanded constant maintenance and high-octane racing fuel. But on the drag strip, they were devastating. Quarter-mile times in the low 12-second range at speeds exceeding 115 miles per hour were achievable with skilled drivers, performance that embarrassed purpose-built drag cars. The NHRA classified them in super stock categories, where they dominated competition. Today, surviving HEMI lightweights are extraordinarily rare and valuable, representing Chrysler's commitment to drag racing when manufacturers built whatever it took to win. Number 10, 1962, Ford Galaxy 500 Lightweight. Ford's Total Performance program in the early 1960s produced factory race cars barely disguised as street vehicles. The Galaxy 500 Lightweight represented Ford's commitment to NASCAR and drag racing, a full-size sedan stripped of weight and powered by Ford's most potent engines. The 406 cubic inch V8, Ford's big block performance engine, produced 405 horsepower through a single 4-barrel carburetor, high-flow cylinder heads, and aggressive camshaft timing. The engine featured forged internals throughout, pistons, connecting rods, crankshaft, built to survive racing stresses that would destroy passenger car components. Ford's weight reduction program was comprehensive and aggressive. Aluminum replaced steel for hood, doors, fenders, and trunk lid, saving hundreds of pounds. The bumpers were aluminum. The interior was stripped. Rubber mats, lightweight seats, minimal trim. Even the glass was thinner than production specification. Some cars left the factory with fiberglass body panels, though these were intended for pure race applications and weren't street legal in most jurisdictions. The suspension featured heavy-duty components throughout, stiffer springs, performance shock absorbers, and upgraded bushings. The 4-speed manual transmission used Borg-Warner internals capable of handling the big block's torque. The rear axle featured a limited slip differential and racing-oriented gear ratios. The Galaxy Lightweight's size worked against it in some applications. The full-size body created aerodynamic drag that hurt top speed compared to smaller competitors. But on drag strips and NASCAR short tracks, the combination of power and reduced weight made it competitive. Ford built limited numbers, just enough to satisfy homologation requirements for NASCAR and NHRA competition. The cars were expensive and impractical. The racing components and weight reduction added cost, while reducing comfort and usability. But serious racers appreciated having factory-built race cars, machines engineered and assembled by Ford specifically for competition. On NASCAR tracks, Galaxy Lightweights competed successfully against lighter, more aerodynamic competitors. In drag racing, they dominated superstock classes with quarter-mile times in the low 13-second range. Today, authentic Galaxy Lightweights are rare and valuable, sought by collectors who appreciate Ford's total performance era when winning races justified building impractical street cars. Number 9, 1969 AMC AMX Superstock. American Motors Corporation couldn't match the Big Three's budgets or resources, but that didn't stop them from building genuine factory race cars. The AMX Superstock represented AMC's entry into NHRA drag racing, a limited production special built specifically for superstock competition. AMC built only 52 examples to meet NHRA homologation requirements, making the Superstock AMX one of the rarest American muscle cars. The 390 cubic inch V8 produced a rated 340 horsepower, though that figure was conservative. The engine featured high compression pistons, aggressive camshaft timing, and ported cylinder heads that maximized airflow. The induction system used a single 4-barrel carburetor mounted on a performance intake manifold. The AMX's compact 2-seat body provided advantages in NHRA's weight-to-displacement formulas. The short wheelbase and relatively lightweight, around 3,300 pounds, created favorable power-to-weight ratios. AMC's engineers stripped weight wherever possible without resorting to exotic materials. Thinner glass, minimal sound deadening, lightweight seats, and deleted options like air conditioning and power steering. The 4-speed manual transmission featured close ratio gearing that kept the engine in its power band. The rear axle used a twin-grip limited slip differential with drag racing-oriented gear ratios, typically 4.44 to 1. The suspension was tuned specifically for drag racing. Heavy-duty springs and shock absorbers controlled weight transfer during launches while maintaining straight-line stability. The front suspension used stiffer springs to prevent nosedive under braking. The AMX Superstock's appearance was purposeful. Hood scoops, minimal chrome, and aggressive stance signaled its racing intentions. The 2-seat configuration eliminated rear seat weight while maintaining structural rigidity. The short deck and long hood proportions were classically American, and the overall styling was attractive despite the AMX's budget origins. On the drag strip, Superstock AMXs were giant killers, embarrassing bigger, more powerful cars through superior power-to-weight ratios and weight transfer. Quarter-mile times in the low 13-second range were achievable, and skilled drivers could dip into the 12-second range with optimal conditions and tuning. AMC supported racers with factory parts and technical assistance, recognizing that racing success generated publicity and sales. Today, Superstock AMXs are extremely rare. Many were destroyed in racing accidents or stripped for parts. Survivors command strong prices from collectors who appreciate AMC's David versus Goliath effort to compete with manufacturers that had far greater resources. Number 8. 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88. Chevrolet's L88 Corvette represented pure, uncompromising racing focus, disguised as a streetcar option package. The L88 427 cubic inch big block V8 carried a rated 430 horsepower, but that figure was deliberately understated to discourage casual buyers and satisfy GM's internal power limits. The actual output approached 560 horsepower, making the L88 one of the most powerful production engines of the decade. The engine featured aluminum cylinder heads that reduced weight while improving cooling and flow. The compression ratio exceeded 12 to 1, requiring racing fuel for proper operation. The solid lifter camshaft featured aggressive timing and high lift that created tremendous top-end power at the cost of low-speed tractability. The single 4-barrel carburetor sat atop a high-rise aluminum intake manifold. The engine breathed through headers and a low-restriction exhaust system. Chevrolet made the L88 deliberately uncomfortable and impractical to ensure it went to serious racers rather than street drivers. The option package deleted the radio, heater, and air conditioning, not as cost reduction, but to discourage casual buyers. The L88 required premium racing fuel, making it expensive and impractical for street use. The aggressive camshaft timing created rough idle and poor low-speed response, characteristics that frustrated drivers expecting traditional muscle car behavior. But on racetracks, the L88 was devastating. The massive power combined with the Corvette's relatively light fiberglass body and sophisticated suspension created a machine capable of competing with purpose-built race cars. The 4-speed manual transmission featured heavy-duty internals, and the rear differential used posit-traction limited slip with race-oriented gear ratios. The suspension used heavy-duty springs, performance shock absorbers, and anti-roll bars, front and rear. The braking system featured large discs at all 4 corners, providing stopping power adequate for racing speeds. Chevrolet built only 20 L88 Corvettes in 1967. The expensive package and deleted comfort features limited sales to serious racers. On SCCA and NASCAR tracks, L88 Corvettes competed successfully against Cobras. Today, they're among the most valuable American performance cars, commanding 7-figure prices and representing Chevrolet's commitment to racing over sales volume. Number 7. 1968 Dodge Dart HEMI. Dodge took the compact Dart body, stripped it to bare essentials, and installed the most powerful engine they produced. The result was one of the purest factory drag cars ever built, a machine with a single purpose and zero compromises. The 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 produced a rated 425 horsepower, though actual output in race trim exceeded 550 horses. The engine was identical to units used in larger Dodge muscle cars: hemispherical combustion chambers, dual 4-barrel carburetors, forged internals throughout. But in the lightweight Dart body, the power-to-weight ratio approached purpose-built drag cars. Dodge's weight reduction was extreme. The hood and front fenders were fiberglass, the doors were aluminum, the rear seats were deleted entirely, and the front seats were lightweight buckets. Sound deadening was eliminated, creating interior noise levels that made conversation impossible at speed. The glass was thinner than production specification. Even the battery was relocated to the trunk to improve weight distribution. The result was a car weighing around 3,100 pounds, hundreds of pounds lighter than standard Darts, and far lighter than big-body Hemi cars. The suspension was purpose-built for drag racing. Heavy-duty springs and shock absorbers controlled weight transfer during launches. The front suspension used minimal components to reduce weight, accepting poor street manners in exchange for straight-line performance. The rear suspension featured heavy-duty leaf springs and a Dana differential with gear ratios optimized for quarter-mile acceleration. The 4-speed manual transmission was the only option, featuring heavy-duty internals throughout. The Hemi Dart's appearance was purposeful and intimidating. The fiberglass hood with its functional scoop, the minimal chrome, the aggressive stance all signaled racing intentions. The interior was stripped to essentials: rubber floor mats, basic instrumentation, and seats that provided minimal comfort. There was no radio, no heater, no sound deadening, nothing that didn't contribute to going fast in a straight line. Dodge built approximately 80 Hemi Darts for 1968, all intended for NHRA super stock drag racing. The cars weren't practical for street use. The race-oriented gearing, harsh suspension, and demanding Hemi engine made them unpleasant for normal driving. But on drag strips, they were absolutely dominant, running low 11-second quarter miles. Today, authentic Hemi Darts are extraordinarily rare and valuable, commanding prices approaching 7 figures and representing Mopar's absolute commitment to drag racing dominance. Number 6. 1969 Ford Torino Talladega. Ford's answer to Mopar's aerodynamic warriors came in the form of the Torino Talladega, a NASCAR homologation special, built specifically to compete on superspeedways. The Talladega featured extensive aerodynamic modifications that transformed the ordinary Torino into a slippery, high-speed racing machine. The nose was extended and sloped, creating a more aerodynamic profile that reduced drag and improved stability at speeds exceeding 180 miles per hour. The front bumper was flush-mounted and integrated into the nose design. The grille opening was smaller and positioned to optimize cooling while minimizing drag. The roofline was lowered slightly and the rear window was laid back at a sharper angle, all in pursuit of aerodynamic efficiency. The 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8 produced a rated 335 horsepower, though actual output exceeded 400 horses. The engine featured a 4-barrel carburetor, aggressive camshaft timing, and high-flow cylinder heads. The ram air induction system forced cold air directly into the carburetor, improving power and throttle response. The suspension was tuned for high-speed stability rather than handling agility. The Talladega was designed for NASCAR ovals, where speeds remained high and cornering loads were consistent. Heavy-duty springs and shock absorbers controlled body motions, and anti-roll bars, front and rear, reduced roll in corners. The steering was quick enough for racing, but not overly sensitive at high speeds. The braking system used front discs and rear drums adequate for the car's performance. Ford built exactly 754 Talladega models to satisfy NASCAR's homologation requirements. The production cars were available to the public, though most buyers understood they were purchasing racing homologation specials rather than practical street cars. The aerodynamic modifications were functional rather than cosmetic. Wind tunnel testing and track experience informed every change. The result was a car capable of achieving speeds that standard Torinos couldn't approach, gaining 5 to 7 miles per hour in top speed through reduced drag. On NASCAR superspeedways, Talladega Torinos dominated 1969 competition, winning races at Daytona and other high-speed tracks. The aerodynamic advantages were decisive. Talladegas could run faster lap times while using less fuel and generating less tire wear. Ford's engineering had created a race car that met production requirements while maintaining genuine competition advantages. Today, Talladega Torinos are highly collectible, valued for their racing heritage and distinctive styling. They represent Ford's commitment to NASCAR success and willingness to build specialized vehicles for racing homologation. Number 5. 1964 Pontiac Tempest Le Mans GTO Tri-Power. The car that arguably started the muscle car era wasn't originally planned as a standalone model. It was an option package that became a legend. Pontiac engineer John DeLorean and his team circumvented GM's ban on intermediate cars with engines larger than 330 cubic inches by making the 389 cubic inch V8 an option package rather than a standard engine. The GTO, Gran Turismo Omologato, Italian for Grand Touring Homologated, referenced European GT racing and positioned Pontiac's creation as an American interpretation of race-bred performance. The tri-power setup used 3 two-barrel carburetors, a center carburetor for normal driving, and outboard carburetors that opened under heavy throttle. The progressive setup provided excellent drivability while delivering maximum power when demanded. The engine produced 348 horsepower, though that figure was conservative to avoid GM executive interference and insurance penalties. The actual output approached 370 horses with optimal tuning. The 4-speed manual transmission featured a Hurst shifter that provided positive mechanical engagement. The rear axle used Pontiac's safe T-Track limited slip differential with various gear ratio options. The suspension featured heavy-duty components, stiffer springs, performance shock absorbers, and larger anti-roll bars. The braking system used drums all around, adequate for the era but marginal by later standards. The GTO's styling was aggressive and purposeful. Hood scoops, dual exhaust, and distinctive striping created visual impact that matched the performance. The interior featured bucket seats, full instrumentation, and sporty trim that reinforced the performance image. Pontiac positioned the GTO as a complete performance package, rather than just an engine option, including handling and braking upgrades that made it competent in corners as well as straight lines. The original GTO succeeded beyond Pontiac's expectations. Projected sales of 5,000 units were exceeded many times over, as buyers responded enthusiastically to the combination of big block power in a mid-size body at reasonable prices. The GTO established a formula that competitors would copy: stuff the biggest available engine into an intermediate body, add performance suspension and brakes, create aggressive styling, and market it to young buyers who wanted performance and image. Today, 1964 GTOs with tri-power are among the most collectible muscle cars, representing the birth of a movement that defined American performance for a decade. They proved that race-derived engineering could succeed in the street car market and established Pontiac as a performance brand. Number 4, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro, ZL1. Chevrolet's COPO, Central Office Production Order, program allowed dealers to order special vehicles with combinations not available through normal channels. The ZL1 Camaro represented the ultimate expression of this program, combining the lightweight aluminum 427 cubic inch big block V8 with the Camaro's relatively compact body. The result was one of the rarest and most powerful factory muscle cars ever built. The ZL1 engine carried a rated 430 horsepower, but that figure was absurdly conservative. The actual output exceeded 520 horsepower, with some dyno tests suggesting numbers approaching 550 horses. The engine featured aluminum cylinder block and heads that saved over 100 pounds compared to iron equivalents. The compression ratio exceeded 12:1, requiring racing fuel. The solid lifter camshaft featured aggressive timing that created tremendous power at high RPM while sacrificing low-speed tractability. The Holley 4-barrel carburetor sat atop an aluminum intake manifold designed for maximum airflow. The engine breathed through headers and a low-restriction exhaust system that created a sound more appropriate for race cars than street machines. Chevrolet built only 69 ZL1 Camaros, all ordered through the COPO program by dealers who understood the market for ultra-high-performance vehicles. The ZL1 package was extraordinarily expensive. The engine alone cost over $4,000, more than the price of many complete cars. The total cost approached $7,000, pricing the ZL1 out of reach for most buyers. But the performance justified the expense. Quarter-mile times in the low 12-second range were possible with street tires and factory tune. Skilled drag racers running slicks and optimal tuning could achieve high 11-second times at speeds exceeding 120 miles per hour. The power-to-weight ratio was exceptional. The lightweight aluminum engine and the relatively light Camaro body created acceleration that embarrassed far more expensive cars. The handling was competent, thanks to the Camaro's well-designed suspension. and the reduced front-end weight from the aluminum engine. The ZL1's appearance was deceptively subtle. The Copo cars lacked the stripes and graphics of regular Camaros, and the ZL1 engine was visually similar to standard big blocks. This sleeper character made the ZL1 devastating in street racing, where opponents underestimated the plain-looking Camaro. Today, ZL1 Camaros are among the most valuable muscle cars, with authentic examples commanding seven-figure prices. The combination of extreme rarity, documented performance, and Copo mystique makes them ultimate collector prizes. Number 3, 1968, Ford Mustang Cobra Jet 428. Ford's Cobra Jet program created one of the most successful factory drag racing engines of the muscle car era. The 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8 carried a rated 335 horsepower, but that figure was deliberately understated to avoid insurance penalties and satisfy Ford's internal politics. The actual output approached 430 horsepower, with many engines exceeding that in optimal tune. Ford built the Cobra Jet specifically for NHRA drag racing, engineering it to dominate superstock classes. The engine featured strengthened block casting, heavy-duty connecting rods, and improved oiling system. The cylinder heads flowed significantly better than standard FE big block heads. The intake manifold was designed for maximum airflow, and the Holley 4-barrel carburetor was jetted aggressively. The ram air induction system, standard on most Cobra Jets, forced cold air directly into the carburetor through a functional hood scoop. The result was an engine that combined durability with tremendous power, capable of surviving drag racing abuse while delivering performance that embarrassed competitors. The Cobra Jet Mustang's performance was sensational. Quarter-mile times in the low 13-second range were achievable with factory components and street tires. Drag racers running slicks could dip into the high 12-second range. The Torque was the real story. Over 440 foot-pounds delivered in a brutal rush that overwhelmed rear tires and created acceleration that felt violent. The Mustang's relatively light body, under 3,300 pounds in base form, meant the Cobra Jet's power created exceptional power-to-weight ratios. The suspension received upgrades with the Cobra Jet package: stiffer springs, heavy-duty shock absorbers, and staggered rear shocks to control wheel hop during hard acceleration. The rear axle featured traction lock limited slip, with gear ratios optimized for drag racing. The 4-speed manual transmission used heavy-duty internals throughout. The Cobra Jet Mustang's success in NHRA drag racing was immediate and overwhelming. It won stock eliminator at the 1968 NHRA Winter Nationals within months of introduction, validating Ford's engineering. The combination of power, lightweight, and durability made it the car to beat in multiple drag racing classes. Ford built thousands of Cobra Jet Mustangs, making them accessible to racers and enthusiasts. Today, they remain among the most popular classic Mustangs, valued for their performance heritage and proven capabilities. The Cobra Jet engine's legend extends beyond Mustangs. It powered Torinos, Cougars, and other Ford products, establishing itself as one of the great American performance engines. Number 2, 1969, Plymouth Roadrunner, 446-pack, a 12. Plymouth's A12 Roadrunner represented Mopar's ultimate factory drag racing weapon for 1969, a stripped-down, purpose-built machine designed to dominate NHRA superstock classes. The 440 cubic inch V8 with 6-pack carburation produced 390 horsepower, delivered through triple 2-barrel carburetors that provided progressive power delivery. The center carburetor handled normal driving, while the outboard carburetors opened under heavy throttle, creating a rush of power that overwhelmed tires and created drama. The A12 package included extensive modifications beyond the engine. The hood was fiberglass with a functional scoop that fed cold air to the carburetors, reducing weight while improving performance. The rear axle featured a Dana unit with gear ratios optimized for drag racing, typically 4.10 or deeper. The suspension was stiffened specifically for straight-line acceleration. Heavy-duty leaf springs and shock absorbers controlled weight transfer during launches. Plymouth stripped weight wherever possible. The interior featured minimal sound, deadening, basic seats, and deleted options. The A12 cars came without radios as standard, though dealers could add them. The focus was singular, quarter-mile dominance, with no compromises for comfort or civility. The 4-speed manual transmission featured a Hurst shifter and heavy-duty components throughout. The result was a car that could run quarter miles in the low 13-second range with street tires and factory tune. Drag racers with experience and optimal setups achieved high 12-second times at speeds approaching 110 miles per hour. The power-to-weight ratio was exceptional for a full-size muscle car. The six-pack engine's output combined with aggressive weight reduction created acceleration that embarrassed smaller, supposedly faster cars. Plymouth built just under 500 A12 Roadrunners, split between 4 speeds and automatics. The limited production satisfied NHRA homologation requirements while keeping the A12 exclusive. The cars were expensive compared to standard Roadrunners, and the race-oriented setup made them impractical for daily driving. But serious drag racers appreciated having factory-built race cars that arrived ready to compete. Today, A12 Roadrunners are extremely collectible, valued for their racing heritage and genuine factory performance credentials. They represent Plymouth at its most aggressive, building race cars barely disguised as street vehicles. Number 1, 1969, Dodge Charger Daytona. The Charger Daytona stands as the ultimate 1960s factory race car, disguised as a street vehicle, a machine so focused on NASCAR competition that styling and practicality became completely irrelevant. Dodge's aerodynamic experiment featured modifications so extreme they remain shocking even decades later. An 18-inch nose cone extending forward from the grille, and a massive rear wing mounted on tall struts standing nearly 2 feet above the trunk lid. The engineering behind these modifications was sophisticated and revolutionary. Dodge conducted extensive wind tunnel testing to optimize every element of the Daytona's aerodynamics. The nose cone reduced frontal area and smoothed airflow over the car, eliminating the turbulence created by standard Charger styling. The flush-mounted grille directed air through the radiator efficiently while maintaining aerodynamic cleanliness. The hidden headlights eliminated protrusions that created drag. The rear window was flushed and angled to maintain smooth airflow over the roof. The massive rear wing, positioned precisely through testing and computation, generated downforce that improved high-speed stability while actually reducing total drag compared to the standard Charger's trunk. The result was a car capable of exceeding 200 miles per hour on NASCAR superspeedways, the first stock car to break that barrier. The street versions powered by either the 440 Magnum or 426 Hemi V8 weren't quite that fast, but they remained extraordinarily quick. The Hemi Daytona produced a rated 425 horsepower, with actual output exceeding 500 horses in race tune. Quarter-mile performance was in the low 13-second range, at speeds exceeding 115 miles per hour. The top speed, limited by gearing and power rather than aerodynamics, approached 140 miles per hour. The Daytona's engineering brilliance extended beyond straight-line speed. The aerodynamic improvements created remarkable high-speed stability, where standard Chargers became nervous and difficult to control above 120 miles per hour. The Daytona remained composed and predictable at speeds approaching its maximum. The rear wing's downforce improved traction and allowed higher cornering speeds on banked NASCAR tracks. The reduced drag improved fuel economy at sustained racing speeds, a significant advantage during long NASCAR events. On superspeedways in 1969 and early 1970, Daytonas were virtually unbeatable, winning races by huge margins and forcing competitors to develop their own aerodynamic packages. Dodge built approximately 500 Daytonas to satisfy NASCAR homologation requirements, then discontinued the model as the aerodynamic wars escalated beyond reason. The street cars struggled to find buyers initially. The outrageous styling deterred many potential customers, and dealers often removed the wings and nose cones to make cars more saleable. But the handful of buyers who understood what they were purchasing acquired genuine racing legends, cars that represented the absolute peak of 1960s factory race car engineering. Today, Charger Daytonas are among the most valuable American muscle cars, with Hemi examples commanding 7-figure prices. The wing and nose that once drew mockery are now instantly recognizable icons that define the aerodynamic era. The Daytona proved that engineering vision could create beauty through function, that the pursuit of speed justified aesthetic extremes, and that sometimes the most controversial designs become the most legendary. These machines weren't just fast street cars. They were purpose-built racing weapons that happened to be street legal, engineered without compromise to dominate competition while satisfying homologation requirements that forced manufacturers to offer them to the public. From aerodynamic monsters with cartoonish wings to stripped-down drag terrors with aluminum body panels. From Copo specials built through dealer ordering loopholes to homologation rarities constructed in minimum numbers, these cars represented Detroit at its most audacious and uncompromising. They proved that the line between race car and street car could be erased completely when winning mattered more than practicality, when engineers had freedom to build whatever competition demanded, and when manufacturers committed resources to racing success regardless of cost. Which of these factory race cars represents the ultimate expression of 1960s performance? Which one would you take to the track? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you love stories from the era when Detroit built race cars you could license and drive home, hit subscribe for more deep dives into the machines that blurred every line between street and strip, showroom and speedway.